Walter became the top scorer of the college entrance examination that year. The school, in order to recruit him, gave him an additional quota for a couple. Everyone thought he would give that spot to me, but in the end, the one who entered Peking University with him was the transfer student, Elisa. Peking University is Elisa's dream. She needs this spot more, Walter said. My grades weren't good. If I went, people would talk. So he helped me apply to an art school in Beijing and promised me, when you graduate, we'll get married. But later, I started my journey studying abroad. When we met again, Walter's eyes turned red as he stared at the ring on my finger. Why? Didn't you say you would only marry me? Chapter 1. 7 years after graduating from high school, I heard Walter's name for the first time again. It was at an airport in a foreign country. The girl sitting next to me in the waiting area had already glanced my way 7 times, before finally calling out tentatively, "Mint?" I instinctively looked up, facing her unfamiliar features. I was full of confusion. It really is you? Do you remember me? I went to Blue Sky No. 5 high school too. Seeing my reaction, she suddenly became delighted. Blue Sky No. 5 high school was my alma mater. She was a classmate from my year. She said we had once rehearsed a performance together for the school anniversary. I could tell she was trying very hard to awaken my memory of her, but high school already felt too far away. Many once familiar names and faces had blurred. No matter how hard I searched my memory, I still couldn't recognize her. But she wasn't embarrassed. Instead, she asked, "It's okay if you don't remember me. Do you still remember Walter?" Walter. The moment that name reached my ears, my expression and gaze shifted, so obviously that she noticed at once. She continued, "Back then, you two were the school's legendary golden couple. When Walter became the top scorer, the school went all out to keep him. They even added an extra spot just for him, saying he could bring his girlfriend along. So, did you and Walter go to Peking University together? Have you two graduated? Did you get married? Are you traveling for work?" She kept talking, asking 4 or 5 questions in a row, but in truth, I didn't hear any of them clearly. My mind was flooded with memories stirred up by that one name. I didn't know how to respond to her enthusiasm. Fortunately, the boarding announcement for my flight sounded at that moment. I stood up abruptly. "Sorry, I have to board now." She was caught off guard, left looking at me in confusion. Chapter 2. But my emotions didn't calm down just because I walked away. Instead, as I settled into my seat, planning to sleep through the long 7-hour flight, they grew even heavier the moment I closed my eyes. The name Walter echoed in my mind. It was like a sealed incantation, once spoken. Everything related to him began spilling out, like desert sands. Walter was my childhood friend. He was also the first true genius in the history of Blue Sky No. 5 high school. During our 3 years of high school, he won over 20 awards for the school. 7 years ago, during the college entrance exam, he achieved a near-perfect score of 748 and became the national top scorer. Even the universities in the capital were shaken, recruiting him overnight, just like the girl had said, to win him over. 2 top-tier universities offered extremely tempting conditions, and promised that Walter could bring anyone he wished to be admitted alongside him. That year, before Walter even said a word, congratulations had already reached my ears. After all, everyone in our grade knew Walter and I had grown up together, inseparable. But now, recalling the excitement and admiration in that girl's eyes, I felt a faint ripple of irony and surprise spreading in my heart. So even after all these years, there were still people who didn't know that the person who went to university with Walter back then was not me. Chapter 3. 7 hours. I spent 6.5 of them in a daze. It wasn't until I got off the plane and received a phone call that the things swirling in my mind were pushed aside by another person's voice. Only then did I feel slightly better. "Hello? Have you arrived?" Just landed." "What's wrong? Your mood sounds off." He sensed something was wrong, just from the few words I said. I couldn't help but be impressed by Hudson's sharp intuition, but I didn't want to tell him what had happened before boarding. No need to create unnecessary worry. "It's nothing. Just the long flight. Then hurry back to the hotel and get some rest. Okay. I hung up and got on the hotel shuttle. The jet lag was harder to deal with than I expected, even though I was exhausted. The moment I closed my eyes, I couldn't fall asleep. By the time I finally adjusted, I unexpectedly received a call from Jessica, our high school class monitor. Mint, how could you come back to the country without telling me? She sounded excited. I, however, was surprised. How did you know? Of course I saw it in our high school group chat. What? I hadn't logged into my old WeChat account for ages. It took me a long time to even remember the password. Before graduation, our classmates created a group chat for our year. It used to be lively, but as time passed, it hadn't been active for years. Yet 2 days ago, someone sent a picture of me to the group. Oh my God. I ran into our school beauty at a foreign airport. At first I wasn't sure it was her. I called her name to confirm. She's so beautiful, tall, elegant. I'm literally suffocating. It was a side profile of me, head lowered, eyes closed, sitting in a chair. I recognized the background instantly. It was the boarding area from a few days ago. No guessing needed. The person who took it and posted it was the classmate I ran into that day. Because of that picture, the group chat suddenly revived. It really is her. She hasn't changed at all. Is she alone? Where's Walter? Didn't he come with her? I scrolled further. Walter's name appeared again, just like before. No matter when. If one of our names was mentioned, the other would inevitably follow, shadowing each other. Unforgettable. Chapter 4. No, she was alone. The girl who posted the photo replied. Some people were confused, some surprised, until a message popped up. You guys don't know? Walter and Mint broke up the year they graduated from high school. The long silent group chat exploded again. Huh? What happened? Break up? Walter liked Mint so much. How could he bear to break up? The gossip spiraled. Nearly 1,000 messages in total. And me, after seeing the very first one, I no longer had the slightest interest in scrolling down. Jessica was still talking nonstop on the phone. She asked which city I was in now. I didn't hide it and told her honestly. The moment she heard, she became even more excited. What a coincidence. I'm in Beijing too. We have to meet up. Let's have dinner. Back in high school, I had a good relationship with Jessica. After going abroad, she was the only classmate I still kept in touch with, so I didn't refuse and agreed. And because of that one nod, I ended up meeting the person who, in just a few days after my return, had completely disrupted my emotions. Walter. Chapter 5. To be honest, I was a little surprised, because I never expected Walter's friend gathering would be at the same place. When I first saw Jessica, she was just as excited as she had sounded on the phone. After hugging me tightly, she said, "Oh my God, I missed you so much." She was as lively and cheerful as she had been in high school. She looped her arm through mine affectionately, chatting nonstop as we walked. She talked about many things, and I simply listened quietly, until she brought up, "You don't know, when you didn't go to a university back then, our homeroom teacher was so regretful. You've been abroad for years, and he still talks about you to the next class." Sigh. You really, all that over a boy like Walter? Was it worth? Her voice suddenly halted. Her steps also stopped. I had been lost in my own thoughts. The abrupt silence made me realize something. I lifted my eyes, and sure enough, the person in front of us made me pause. Walter. Chapter 6. This was the first time in 7 years that Walter and I saw each other again. In the years of growing alone after our separation, I had imagined countless times what 17-year-old Walter would look like as an adult. And now, the man in front of me was overlapping with the boy in my memory. White shirt, black trousers, a pair of cool yet beautiful eyes. Gone was the youthful greenness of high school, though he no longer carried the energetic air of a teenage boy. He had gained a certain steadiness, a controlled composure. The only thing unchanged was the innate sense of cold distance in his bones. Back then, I thought Walter was like a star, distant and aloof. Seeing him again now, I realized his coldness and distance had only grown. Jessica glanced at me, then at him, the spacious corridor, because of this unexpected encounter, became inexplicably silent. For a moment, it felt narrow, but soon, someone broke that suffocating closeness. Walter, everyone's already here, we're all waiting for you. A soft, gentle female voice came from behind him. She walked directly toward Walter, but when she noticed something strange in his demeanor, her gaze followed his line of sight. The moment our eyes met, I saw shock in hers, then her lips trembled slightly before she spoke my name. Mint. I heard the uneasiness in her voice, and I felt she had absolutely no reason to feel that way. After all, she was the one who won back then, and I was the one who fled in defeat. In that instant, a fleeting thought crossed my mind. If that classmate from the airport were here, I could tell her. Actually, the person who entered Peking University with Walter back then wasn't me. It was her, Elisa. Chapter 7. Before the age of 17, how close were Walter and I? Everyone who knew us knew this. Wherever Walter was, I would be there too. Walter and I had our destinies tied together from the moment we were born. We were born in the same year, same month, same day. From kindergarten onward, we were inseparable. Walter's first piece of candy was always given to me. He fought the first physical fight of his life. Because of me, even when I had my first period, it was Walter who personally went to buy pads for me. Before 17, Walter never missed a single chapter of my life. We were so close that everyone simply assumed we would one day become each other's other half. I thought so, too. But in our second year of high school, Elisa appeared. She was a transfer student from a small county town, and she parachuted straight into the elite class where Walter was. The first time I heard her name was during the midterm exams in our second year. This inconspicuous transfer student placed second in the whole school. Her score was only 1 point lower than Walter, who was ranked first. Damn, she almost caught up to your Walter, Jessica had said at the time, biting on a lollipop, tooting in amazement at the two names so close together on the ranking board. I didn't care back then. Don't worry, Walter's too good. She won't surpass him. Later, I would learn that this chasing was not the kind I thought, and I couldn't have been more wrong. Chapter 8. I didn't know when it began, but Elisa became a topic Walter and I talked about constantly. It was also Elisa who solved the math problem that had troubled Walter for a long time. Maybe it was the first time she scored higher than Walter, or maybe it was the first competition they attended together, where the two of them stood against each other, sharp and competitive, yet somehow perfectly in sync. They won first and second place, bringing honor to the school. A celebratory banner with their names hung on the teaching building for half a month. Back then, I didn't care. The Elisa I had never taken seriously was quietly taking over my place in Walter's world, until the year of the college entrance exam, when Walter said to me, "Mint, I want to apply to Peking University," even though we had already quarreled several times because of Elisa, and were in the middle of a Cold War. I still supported him. Sure, go for it. Only later did I learn Peking University wasn't his dream, it was Elisa's. And on the day he received the extra admission quota from the prestigious universities, he told me himself, "Mint, Peking University is Elisa's dream. She needs this spot more than you. Let her have it." Chapter 9. Now, seeing Walter and Elisa standing side by side, there was a natural magnetic pull between them, an intellectual aura that matched perfectly. Compared to 7 years ago, they seemed even more in sync, especially Elisa. The moment her eyes met mine, she suddenly raised her hand and wrapped it around Walter's arm. "Mint, you're back? Why didn't you tell us?" The uneasiness in her gaze had disappeared. What replaced it was a kind of politeness mixed with pride, and faintly, a declaration of possession. During my years abroad, I wasn't completely cut off from news. In the first year or two after leaving the country, I still heard updates about Walter and Elisa. The two of them entered Peking University together, majored in the same field, joined the same research lab. They continued the brilliance they had shown in high school, working seamlessly together, winning countless awards, smoothly advancing to postgraduate and then doctoral studies. People said they admired each other deeply, complimented each other perfectly. A talented man and a gifted woman, a well-matched pair. Ironically, people once said the same thing about Walter and me, but in a new environment, with new people. Once I was no longer by Walter's side. The one who matched him, understood him, became someone else. I couldn't help recalling what Elisa once said to me. You only look compatible with Walter because you grew up lucky, born into a good family and raised with him. But if you had to stand beside him on your own merit, like I did, it wouldn't necessarily be you. Back then, I dismissed her with disdain. But now, I realized she wasn't wrong. Chapter 10. Jessica was one of the few people who truly knew and understood why Walter and I broke up. She disliked Walter. She disliked Elisa as well. Jessica looped her arm through mine and said, "And who are you? Mint barely knows you. Why should she tell you anything?" Elisa's expression stiffened. She looked helplessly at Walter, perhaps hoping he would, like many times in the past, speak up to defend her. But from the moment he saw me, Walter seemed to have lost his soul. He stood frozen, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on me. Jessica rolled her eyes and tugged my hand. "Let's go. We'll eat somewhere else." It seemed she was even more unwilling than I was to see Walter. But Walter was far more persistent and difficult than we imagined. After we left, Walter followed closely behind, while Jessica and I ate. He parked his car on the roadside. I recognized it immediately, because the numbers on the license plate resembled our shared birthday. Through the windshield, I finally saw him in the driver's seat, but he didn't come forward to disturb me. He simply sat there, still and focused, like a sculpture gazing with unspoken longing. I frowned, and then, on my way back to the hotel, Walter continued following me. Once we arrived, I finally couldn't hold back. I got out of the car, walked to his window, and knocked on the glass. "Walter, don't you know that following someone is illegal?" The window rolled down. Walter lifted his gaze. Only then did I see his eyes, red, strained, shimmering with a trace of moisture. "Mint, you're cruel." Chapter 11. Walter cried. Chapter 12. I remembered when we were in middle school. A boy secretly took an upskirt photo of me, and Walter was so furious that he went to demand justice for me. It was the first fight he ever got into. He had no technique, only brute force. The other boy was beaten so badly he ended up in the hospital. The boy's parents came storming in, shouting that they wanted Walter to receive a severe disciplinary punishment. When the teacher demanded an apology, Walter was more stubborn than anyone. "I won't apologize. Whoever bullies Mint, I'll destroy them." That day he was beaten by his father so badly he couldn't get up. When I went to see him, and saw him lying on his stomach on the bed, my tears immediately began falling one after another. Walter's heart ached for me while wiping my tears. He comforted me. "Why are you crying? Does it hurt?" "It doesn't." "Liar." I clearly saw him trembling from the pain. Back then, no matter how much it hurt, Walter never shed a single tear. But now, he tilted his head slightly upward, and upon seeing me again for the first time in 7 years, tears fell. Those tears slid slowly from the outer corners of Walter's eyes. He looked as though he had suffered a great grievance. His nose, his eyes, even his ears were red. He said I was cruel, that I had really managed to go 7 whole years without contacting him. Yes, who would have thought that someone who used to panic after being away from Walter for a single day could now endure 7 years without seeing him? When I resolutely left to study abroad, everyone assumed I was throwing a tantrum. No one believed I could truly let go of 18 years of intertwined affection with Walter. Walter didn't believe it either. He came to find me and said he wanted to fill out my college applications for me. "I picked a lot of art schools for you, all in Beijing. Mint, don't be mad. We can still be together." But by then, he had already given the extra admission spot to Elisa. The people who once congratulated me fell silent. Their looks and attitudes shifted into pity and regret. Walter hugged me and promised, "When you graduate, we'll get married, okay?" He knew exactly what I cared about. I couldn't leave Walter, because I really, truly liked him. I was even certain that in this lifetime, I could only love Walter. 18 years ago. Yes. 18 years later. The same, but the affection of youth doesn't necessarily last a lifetime. I stared quietly at Walter. If this had been a long, long time ago, if he looked at me like this and said those words, I would have felt heartbroken beyond measure. But now, my heart was as calm as still water. I didn't even wish to reminisce about the past with him here, nor argue about who was right or wrong. I raised my hand and called over hotel security. I reminded him, this man has been following me the whole way. Please keep an eye on him. The security guard's expression shifted from confusion to seriousness. He watched Walter cautiously, and I turned around and walked toward the hotel lobby. Chapter 13. 2 days later, I returned to my high school alma mater to visit my homeroom teacher. When she saw me, she was overjoyed. She held my hand and said many things, her eyes full of affection and emotion. How are you doing now? Are you still painting? When I first entered high school, my grades were unstable. My family was worried sick that I wouldn't get into university. It was my new homeroom teacher who discovered my talent in art. I had absolute color sensitivity and a strong sense of spatial imagination. She strongly recommended that I pursue the arts. And so, I stepped onto the path of studying painting. During my 3 years of high school, she took great care of me, even when I was applying abroad for art schools. I relied on her guidance and support. After Walter and I broke up, she was truly worried that heartbreak would make me abandon painting forever. Teacher, I never stopped. She was the person I was most grateful to, and this time, I had even prepared a surprise for her. Teacher, I came back this time because a university invited me to hold my solo art exhibition. I handed her the invitation letter from my bag. Her confused expression quickly turned into utter shock. A university? A solo exhibition? Her hand trembled slightly as she held the invitation. Her eyes shifted from shock to satisfaction. Gradually, a thin layer of tears welled in her gaze. I knew it. Mint. You're gifted. You're my proudest student. Back then, because of Walter, I was so afraid. My heart tightened. Teacher, she wiped her tears, looking at me with overwhelming emotion. When you gave up Central Academy of Fine Arts and a university, I was so worried. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. The more she wiped, the more her tears flowed. I couldn't help but feel my own eyes sting. You will always be my mentor. I chatted with her for a long time. She promised she would definitely come to my exhibition. Before I left, she couldn't help but say, Mint, compared to before, your paintings have gained more brightness. I knew what she meant. I smiled softly. Teacher, just as you think. Hearing the answer, she nodded gently. She looked at me the same way she did years ago, gentle and kind. Congratulations, and blessings to you. I will indeed. Chapter 14. After the visit, I returned to the hotel. The security guard from before saw me and suddenly walked over. Miss, that friend of yours is here again. Friend? I followed his gaze in confusion and saw Walter's car again. This time, my frown was deeper than the last 2 days. The guard said helplessly, he's come every day. He never says anything, just waits here. He had asked Walter once before, but Walter had taken out our old photo together, saying he meant no harm. The guard had watched him for 2 days and indeed found nothing unusual. Walter never approached or spoke. He simply waited here every night, without fail. During the day he left, likely returning to the university lab for work. Miss, are you two having a fight? He asked gently. I shook my head. I'm not close to him, but he's been keeping watch over you for days, and today, he doesn't look very well. He told me. I was stunned for a moment. I looked outside, just in time to meet Walter's gaze. Indeed, compared to the previous days, he looked paler, worn out. These days had been scorching hot. The guard was worried something might happen to him, so he asked, should we call the police, miss? I was about to nod, when a car pulled up and someone got out. It was Elisa. She rushed toward Walter anxiously, pulled open his car door, and said something I couldn't hear. Then Elisa looked toward me, her eyes full of indignation. I withdrew my gaze. No need, someone's already here to take him. Chapter 15. I didn't give much thought to Walter's situation, setting aside the fact that so many years had already passed. Bringing it up again held no meaning. This time, my main purpose in returning to the country was to hold my art exhibition. It was my first exhibition in China. I did not want any accidents. So before the exhibition ended, I didn't want to divide my attention onto anything else. But I didn't expect my reunion with Walter would actually have follow-up consequences. Walter fell ill. Over the years, he had been a prominent figure at the university. Suddenly becoming sick drew a lot of concern. Many people were asking what happened. Nothing stays secret forever, and I didn't know where the rumor originated, but it began circulating that Walter was sick because of me. Ugh, Walter is so pitiful. He always ends up hurt because of her. Well, Mint has always been Walter's weak spot. Did you forget the fight he got into for her? Honestly, they've broken up for years. Why is Walter still chasing after her? He still loves her. Walter was crazy about Mint. When she left the country without saying a word, he nearly lost half his soul. Exactly. Now that she's back, he waits outside for several nights, terrified she'll run off again. The long silent alumni group chat became lively again because of Walter and me. Clearly, everyone was very free, as if they were watching a long-running drama unfold. Almost every day, someone would dig up a new detail. One person would talk about how close Walter and I used to be. Another would mention how, after I went abroad, Walter became lost and dispirited. And finally, someone would ask, so why did she come back this time? Is it for Walter? By the time these messages reached my ears, the preliminary preparations for the exhibition were nearly complete. Around the same time, I received a call from Hudson. As usual, he asked about the progress of my exhibition. After hearing that everything was going smoothly, his voice carried an apologetic tone. Sorry, I really can't accompany you this time. I could hear the frustration and disappointment in his voice. A little helpless, I reminded him with a smile. Mr. Hudson, we're only apart for half a month, but half a month is already so long. Hudson said pitifully. I miss you. We've never been apart this long before. That was true. Whenever I held exhibitions abroad, he always managed to accompany me, but this time the distance was too great, and work kept him busy, so I had come back alone. I reassured him, once the exhibition ends, I'll come back right away. Okay, I'll pick you up. My mood brightened after that call, but it didn't last long. A mutual friend from my past with Walter sent me a message. Mint, I heard you came back. Walter is sick. Can you come see him? I frowned. My fingers had already typed the word no, when the sender added another message. Even if you broke up 7 years ago, you don't need to completely cut ties for life, right? Chapter 16. That wasn't entirely true. After thinking for a moment, I still bought a bouquet of flowers and went to the hospital. Walter's ward was easy to find. Before knocking, I heard Elisa's voice inside. How long are you going to torture yourself over her? She doesn't care about you at all. You've been sick for days. Has she come to see you? None of your business. Walter's voice was cold. Elisa grew both angry and upset, until my knocking sound came. She turned her head, saw me, and frowned. Mint? What are you doing here? Walter froze, then quickly lifted his gaze. There were other people in the room as well. I didn't know them, probably people from Walter's lab. Hearing Elisa's reaction, they all turned to look at me. So she's the Mint senior Walter always talks about? Yeah, she's the one who made him sick. I ignored their curious stares. I stepped into the ward and placed the flowers on the table. I heard you were sick, so I came to check on you. That friend was right. Walter and I hadn't reached the point of cutting ties forever. We at least grew up together. Now that I had let go of the past and built a new life, there was no need for me to dwell on Walter. If we could be friends, good. If not, I wouldn't regret it. Coming here today felt like giving closure to our childhood. Chapter 17. That was my thought. But Walter's thoughts were different. The moment he saw me walk closer and speak, his dark, calm eyes lit up noticeably. Mint. Walter called my name once. Then, realizing there were others present, he said, You all can go out first. The visitors turned to leave, except Elisa, who remained standing. Walter said to her, "You should go too." Elisa paused after looking at Walter. She glanced at me again. I saw her lips pressed tightly together, unwillingness flashing in her eyes. Soon, the ward grew quiet. It was the first time in 7 years that Walter and I were alone together. Two people who once talked about everything were now standing in silence. Walter gestured for me to sit. I didn't. I stood 1 meter from his bed, looking at him. "Walter, don't misunderstand. I'm only here to check on you. Now that I see you're okay, I'm leaving." I turned to go. "Mint." Walter suddenly stopped me. I looked back and saw his thin, pale face. "You're still mad at me, aren't you?" What I said that day, I lied. "You're not cruel. I just missed you too much." Walter's voice was hoarse. His eyes reddened again. "For 7 years. I've missed you every moment. You don't know, when I heard you returned, I was so happy." He had looked at the airport photo posted in the group chat countless times, zooming in, zooming out, even though he was certain it was me. He was still so excited that his hands trembled. Until he saw me that day, the heart he'd been holding suspended finally fell. He had so much he wanted to say to me. He kept watch outside my hotel, checking again and again, confirming repeatedly that I had really returned. And now here, when I approached him and spoke, he finally felt real relief. In the past, I always spoke endlessly to Walter. This was the first time the roles reversed. Walter talking nonstop. If it had been me at 17, I would have been overjoyed, absolutely overjoyed. But now, after hearing Walter say "I miss you" over and over, I felt nothing. Walter, staying outside a hotel for several nights without sleeping, that's harassment, not devotion. And I don't miss you. I'm living very well now. I only came back this time because of work. Meeting you again was completely unexpected. If I had the choice, I truly wouldn't have wanted to see him again. My bluntness and coldness instantly wiped away the brightness he had just shown. He stared at me stubbornly, as if searching for proof that I was lying. But unfortunately, I was very calm. "It's getting late. I'm leaving." "Oh, and about the rumors in the group chat, I hope you'll clarify them." I turned to leave. Behind me, Walter suddenly spoke again. "I don't believe it, Mint. I don't believe you. If you really had no feelings left for me at all, you wouldn't have come back." Walter prided himself on knowing me well, but this time, I only felt he was being ridiculous. Chapter 18. Not long after I left the ward, someone called out to me again. "Mint." Elisa walked straight toward me. Her expression was stern and icy. "Talk?" I looked at her in confusion. After all, my relationship with Elisa didn't even count as acquaintances who nodded each other. During the time since I came back, although we had run into each other a few times, we had never exchanged a single word. I truly had no idea what we had to talk about, except Walter. As expected, just as I thought, Elisa was here because of Walter. "You avoided Walter before, and now you show up here on purpose." "Mint, what exactly are you trying to do?" I had no idea what had upset Elisa. But the moment she faced me, she fired off accusations. I felt a little lost. Didn't I just say it? "I came here to visit Walter." "You haven't contacted Walter for 7 years, and now that you're back, you stir up all this mess. How did I never realize before that you were actually so calculating?" But Elisa, just like Walter, didn't believe a word I said. Her expression was cold, with not a trace of warmth in her eyes. I understood then. Elisa had also seen the messages in the group chat. She thought I was playing hard to get, coming back because of Walter. I looked at the hint of scrutiny and hostility flickering in her eyes. In this state, she was completely different from the cautious and timid girl I remembered from high school. Chapter 19. When Elisa was in high school, she was quiet and withdrawn, not fond of talking to others, except with Walter. Whenever it came to exams or contest problems, she could discuss them with him at length, confident and composed. Others said she had a huge contrast in personality, but from the few interactions I had with her, Elisa always gave me a strange feeling. When she learned that I was an art student, she would ask me many questions in front of Walter. I thought she was curious or interested, so I answered patiently. But then Elisa said, "I really envy you guys. It's so nice being art students. You only need a little score to get into university, unlike us." Noticing her misunderstanding, I explained, "That's not true. We also have to put in a lot of effort. Even so, at least you have the art school path to rely on. Many kids from normal families can't afford art classes. They can only rely on studying." I said, "That's not necessarily true. Look at Walter. He doesn't study art and he's still amazing. But a lot of kids from wealthy families don't even need to take the college entrance exam. They get sent to learn art and then go abroad for a fancy diploma, just like you. Isn't that right?" Elisa asked. I didn't know what she was trying to imply, but the topic made me uncomfortable. I had never planned to go abroad. Walter and I had agreed to go to university together, and even our homeroom teacher said back then that I worked hard and had talent if I kept at it. Getting into one of the top art academies wouldn't be a problem, but after I told Elisa this, she didn't seem pleased. "I see. Then you and Walter have a really good relationship. But can you really get into the university Walter wants? A lot of art teachers say that kind of thing. How else would art students keep going? It's like how struggling students still need encouragement," Elisa murmured. There was a deliberately lifted smile on her face, but not a trace of emotion in her eyes. Back then, I still didn't understand why Elisa had such a bias against art students. It wasn't until later that I realized she didn't have a bias against art students. She had a bias against me, and bias breeds malice. During our senior year of high school, that subtle malice seeped into everything, like a venomous snake lurking in the dark, waiting for a chance to strike. In the end, it delivered a fatal blow to me, and all of it was because of Walter. Chapter 20. You left. Fine, but why did you come back? Do you have any idea how Walter lived during these 7 years? Elisa questioned me angrily. She said that in the 7 years after I left, Walter had been living like a puppet. There was once a lab accident. Walter got injured and lay in the ICU for 3 days. He was half dead, unconscious the entire time, but he kept murmuring my name. In the end, they woke him up only by repeatedly calling him at his bedside. The one who stayed with Walter through the hardest times was me. So why? The moment you come back, do you think you can steal all of his attention? Do you want to kill him? Elisa glared at me. It was obvious she was deeply in love with Walter. In these past few days, besides talking about me in the group chat, they also talked about Elisa. In everyone's eyes, she was the deeply devoted one who guarded him silently. Hearing Elisa's words, I didn't know whether to be angry or to laugh. Perhaps the sarcasm in my eyes was too obvious, because Elisa became even angrier. "What are you laughing at? Elisa, isn't everything now exactly what you wished for? But since you didn't succeed, how is any of this my fault?" Elisa's furious expression froze, stiff like a mask. Chapter 21. I met her gaze with cold indifference. To this day, I still remember what Elisa once said to me. "You only get to stay by Walter's side because you were born into a good family and happened to grow up with him. But if you were in my position, you might not be the one standing next to him." I discovered in our senior year that Elisa liked Walter. Back then, Walter had lost a notebook. It wasn't anything important, but inside, Walter had written countless lines of, "Walter will always stay with Mint." Later, I found that notebook in Elisa's possession. Nothing had changed, except that my name had been violently crossed out and replaced with hers. After I discovered that, Elisa no longer hid her hostility toward me. She said, "As long as I have enough time to stay by Walter's side, he'll fall in love with me too." So she had long decided to apply to the same university as Walter. But after she found out about my promise with Walter, 3 months before the college entrance exam, she broke her leg. To this day, I still don't know whether she did it on purpose or not. All I know is that after that, Walter, afraid that Elisa would perform poorly on the exam, tutored her constantly, and on every night Elisa cried to him saying she might fail the exam. He stayed up the entire night comforting her. In the end, After the exam, Elisa missed the admission cutoff for Peking University by just 1 point. She broke down in tears. Everyone felt sorry for her, including Walter. And that night, Walter said to me, "Mint, Elisa needs that spot more than you do." It wasn't as if I hadn't told Walter about the suspicious parts of the whole situation. But at that time, Elisa filled his entire heart. For her. He even said to me, "Your grades aren't good. Even if you get in, people will just talk behind your back." Walter and I had grown up together since childhood. He had never spoken to me like that. At that moment, I knew Elisa had one. I chose to go abroad, determined to sever all ties with Walter. And the fact that I got into a university, I never told anyone. Chapter 22. Are we wrong? Giving the spot to you would have been a waste. So now you're back just to show off that Walter still can't forget you? Elisa snapped, humiliated and furious. I realized Walter and Elisa had both misunderstood the reason for my return. And not just them. Many others had as well. It wasn't that I didn't want to explain. It was simply that soon they would all know the truth. That night, our homeroom teacher posted a moment on her social media. Some students who were mutual contacts took a screenshot and sent it into the group chat. A storm erupted instantly. The caption our teacher wrote was, "Congratulations to my student. 7 years ago, I felt regretful when you gave up a university. Today, being invited by a university to hold your own exhibition as a rising star in the art world makes me proud." She included a photo of the official invitation and a poster of my exhibition. The poster had my name, my photograph, and my representative works. Some people didn't understand art, but they immediately recognized that the person in the photo was me. Our high school homeroom teacher posted this. Is that Mint? So she came back because she was invited to host an exhibition? That's incredible. It really is her. I remember she studied art in high school. Wait, what? Didn't someone say she only studied art because her grades were bad and she didn't get into college? Why does it say she gave up a university? Countless messages exploded from that single screenshot. Some curious people even started searching my name online to confirm the truth. After gossiping about the supposed love story between Walter and me for days, their attention finally shifted to the 7 years I spent abroad. It's true, Mint graduated from one of the world's top art academies. One of her paintings sold for over $1 million a couple of years ago. Not only that, she has hundreds of thousands of followers on foreign platforms. And many art media outlets have reported on her. You culture track students probably don't know this, but Mint was the most talented art student of our year. She passed both the unified and independent exams of the 4 top art academies. Her college entrance score was pretty good too. She really could have gone to a university. Finally, an old art student from our year appeared in the chat. Back then, art students and general track students took classes in different buildings. Information rarely flowed between the two sides. Walter had only known that my score surpassed the cutoff for top-tier universities, but he didn't know that that score was already enough for me to stand beside him, to enter the same university. Chapter 23. When Elisa saw the messages, she turned pale on the spot. I heard she even went to ask her former homeroom teacher for confirmation. The girl who once dismissed me and assumed I was inferior had actually been shining in another world all along. After she got the confirmation, she fell silent for several days, something rare for her. Jessica told me that Elisa used to be very active on her social media, often posting photos of awards she won with Walter. Hey, wasn't there a time she implied you wouldn't get into any university? Jessica asked. By the time she brought it up, my exhibition had already been open for 2 days. She had just received the news from our old teacher and made it in time to send a congratulatory bouquet to wish me success on the opening day. I don't know, I forgot. I shook my head. Jessica didn't pursue the question. She focused on something else. Mint. Walter hasn't come to see you? I hadn't had time to answer when the next second, speak of the devil, Walter appeared. I saw him at the entrance of the exhibition hall. Compared to our first reunion, he looked gaunt, almost skeletal, his complexion pale. He stood motionless in front of the large exhibition poster bearing my face. Like a dried, weathered sculpture, he stood there so long that even the staff noticed. Why won't he go in? Jessica was puzzled. I replied lightly. Maybe he doesn't like my paintings. A long time ago. Walter stopped paying attention to my art. He didn't know which piece I improved on, nor which one won an award. He didn't know that back then, in order to get into the same university as him, I had worked unbelievably hard. Chapter 24. A week later. My exhibition successfully came to an end, thanks to my homeroom teacher promoting it on social media. I met quite a few old friends during the exhibition. On the day it closed, someone messaged me, "Mint, now that the exhibition is over, are you leaving the country?" My flight is the day after tomorrow. Will you come back? We'll see. Then let's have dinner tomorrow. Who knows if we'll ever get the chance to meet again. That last sentence felt strangely sentimental. I thought about it and agreed. After sending my flight information to Hudson, I went to the dinner the next day, but inside the private room, I not only saw some old friends from the past, I also saw Elisa. The moment I saw her, I frowned instinctively. The friend who organized the gathering noticed my reaction and immediately came forward to greet me. "Mint, it's been so many years, but you're still the same as before." They chatted warmly, using my exhibition as a natural topic, out of politeness and old childhood ties. I answered selectively, doing my best to ignore Elisa's presence. But before long, I noticed that they would always, intentionally or not, steer the conversation toward Walter. Sensing something was off, I cut in. "If you have something to say, just say it directly." Everyone froze for a moment. Then someone finally spoke. "Mint, could you go see Walter?" "Walter? What now?" After their explanation, I finally understood. After leaving my exhibition that day, Walter had become utterly despondent. He not only lost focus in his research, but refused to even leave his home. It was as if he had instantly fallen back into the state he was in when I first left the country. "We know you're still angry about what happened back then, but we grew up together. You and Walter used to be so close. Seeing you two like this, it makes us feel awful too," one friend said earnestly, the same one who previously told me to visit Walter in the hospital. But, again and again, they were pushing this on me, and I was growing disgusted. I wasn't angry. Who could stay angry at someone for 7 whole years? It's just that toward Walter, I no longer felt anything. "You're asking the wrong person. I am nobody to Walter. His matters, don't ever bring them to me again." I stood up to leave. Suddenly, Elisa, who had been silent this whole time, lost control. "Mint, must you really be so heartless? You've punished him for 7 years, isn't that enough? Do you want him to die before you're satisfied?" Her sudden shout startled me. I looked around at everyone. No one refuted Elisa. Their silence said everything. In that moment, I suddenly understood. I had come to this reunion for the sake of those childhood memories. But they, in these 7 years, had long since taken Elisa's and Walter's side. Chapter 25. Mint. We don't mean anything else. We just can't bear to see Walter like this. If there were any other way, we wouldn't have asked you. You know what Walter has been through these 7 years? If it weren't for Elisa staying by his side, you probably wouldn't even see him alive now. Walter really likes you. All these years, he's been waiting for you. Left and right, they spoke one sentence after another. Their words were no different from the group chat messages before. Elisa was already crying. Her tears fell one after another. Resentment, blame, pleading, all kinds of complicated emotions mixed in her eyes. Elisa said, "Mint, if you don't feel sorry for Walter, then I do. You've already won. I'm begging you, please go talk to him. From now on, I swear I'll never bother the two of you again." My head felt swollen. My mind echoed only one word, Walter. And right at that moment, I received a message from Hudson. "Got it, babe. Waiting for you to come home." He even sent a shirtless bathroom photo showing off his abs. I wanted to laugh, but the atmosphere in front of me couldn't be more inappropriate. Looking around at everyone, I replied coldly, "I'm not going." "Why?" "I'm married." The air froze instantly. Everyone's expression turned blank and stunned at the same time. Then, in unison, their faces shifted into something complicated. Someone looked behind me. Walter. I turned around and came face to face with Walter's pale, trembling figure, as if he were about to collapse. Chapter 26. I had gotten married 2 years ago. Aside from my family, very few people knew about it. First, because I was living abroad. Second, because my husband Hudson had a special identity and it wasn't suitable to publicize. But if they dug around, they would still be able to find some obscure web pages mentioning my private marriage. Besides, I was only staying in the country for half a month this time. Aside from the people I had to meet, I never intended to make this public to anyone, including Walter. Not because there was no point, but also because I didn't think we would ever meet again anyway. But I never thought that before I left, something like this would still happen. Those who had been shouting the loudest, begging me to give Walter a chance, fell completely silent. The world finally became quiet. Everyone except Walter. It was as if he suddenly realized something. His gaze locked onto my fingers. There was a faint indentation there, the trace of a ring. He had never noticed it before, and as if fulfilling his fears, I took the ring out from my bag and slid it onto my finger. The moment the indentation was covered, Walter's tears spilled over. Why? Didn't you say you would only marry me? Walter repeated again and again. He lifted his eyes to mine, his gaze already wet and bloodshot. You lied to me, didn't you? Mint. Say something. Tell me you lied. Walter's appearance would have moved anyone. No one spoke. I didn't speak either. Yes, I had said that once, but that was a childhood promise. Just like the words Walter wrote in his notebook at 17. Walter will always love Mint. Walter will always stay with Mint. He didn't keep his promise, and I couldn't keep mine. Walter was crying uncontrollably now. His whole body trembled. At some point, the private room had emptied, leaving only the two of us. My sleeve was grabbed. He seemed unable to stand, stumbling as he fell to the floor. Mint. I regret it. I really regret it. Walter chanted desperately. I didn't know exactly when his regret had begun. Walter said if he had known it would end like this, he never should have given Elisa that extra admission spot. Chapter 27. I sighed. You're wrong, Walter. I didn't get married because I was still sulking with you. It's because I don't love you anymore. You probably don't know this, but I actually came back to look for you once. Walter stared at me with reddened eyes. His tear-soaked lashes trembled violently. I looked quietly into his gaze. 3 months after I went abroad, I regretted it too. How could I possibly let go of 18 years of feeling so easily? During that time, I felt lonely and miserable every moment. I cried every day. I regretted acting on impulse, choosing to go abroad out of anger. My longing for him grew like fast-spreading vines, wrapping around me until I couldn't breathe. I wished that one day Walter would appear beside me, but every time I opened my eyes, I was still surrounded by unfamiliar people in an unfamiliar country. Finally, one day, I couldn't take it anymore. I bought a plane ticket home. I remember, it was a rainy night. I took a 7 or 8 hour flight, and then a taxi through the rain to Walter's school, soaking wet from head to toe. But what I saw was Walter and Elisa kissing in front of the laboratory building, their bodies pressed closely together, inseparable. I can no longer remember if that day it was the rain that was too cold, or if it was my heart. All I knew was that from head to toe, I felt frozen like solid ice. Walter, you say you missed me, but in these 7 years, you never once reached out to me. You never asked about my life abroad, not even a little. Nor did you ever, like I once did for you, travel across oceans to find me. You don't love me. What you love is the version of yourself who believes he loved me. That devoted, tragic self-image. Walter let out a painful, broken sob, his voice hoarse, nearly collapsing as he whispered, No, it's not like that. Chapter 28. After that night, my world finally returned to complete quiet, but my high school days were already far too distant from me. No one ever brought up Walter to me again after that. On the day I left, Jessica came to see me off at the airport. Her eyes were full of tears. Once we part today, who knows when we'll meet again. If you ever want to see me, Just come, I'll pay for the plane ticket. Jessica burst into laughter at that. She looked at me, as if many questions were still hovering behind her eyes. I asked her tentatively. Jessica shook her head. It's nothing, I just felt a bit emotional. That's all. Emotional about what? I didn't ask further, I simply waved at her. Then turned toward the security checkpoint. Before boarding, I received a photo from Hudson. He was already at the airport. Babe, I'm here to pick you up your happy puppy. I couldn't help laughing. Later on, the next news I heard about Walter was the news of his death. Rumor had it that he stayed up late working on experiments and died suddenly from cardiac overload. As for Elisa, without Walter, she no longer cared about her studies. Eventually, during one of her outings, she wandered across a street absent-mindedly, was hit by a car, and has not woken up to this day. A friend messaged me, Mint, will you come back for Walter's funeral? No, that was the last time my name and Walter's were ever mentioned together. From then on, looking back across thousands of miles, the people of the past were gone forever.